For 40 years, we believed Jupiter's moon Io was a simple world of chaotic, isolated volcanoes. We called it a pizza moon, a colorful rock plagued by distant fires. But on December 27, 2024, NASA Juno spacecraft flew over the southern hemisphere and captured something that shouldn't exist. It wasn't just an eruption, it was a reading so powerful it literally blinded the spacecraft's infrared instruments. What NASA found in that data, verified only months ago in early 2026, has forced scientists to rethink everything we know about how worlds are built. Because beneath that sulfur crust, something is happening that defies the laws of geology as we know them. On December 27, 2024, NASA Juno spacecraft was screaming past Jupiter's southern clouds on its 67th orbit when it turned its infrared eyes toward E. This wasn't just another routine observation. The JIRAM instrument, the Jovian Infrared Auroral Mapper, was specifically designed to map heat signatures with surgical precision. But as the data packets began streaming back to Earth, the mission team at the National Institute for Astrophysics in Rome noticed something disturbing. The charts didn't show the typical spikes of volcanic activity, they showed a total flat line at the maximum possible reading. The sensor had been saturated. In the world of deep space exploration, saturation is a scientist's worst nightmare and greatest thrill. It means the target was so blindingly bright, so overwhelmingly hot, that it exceeded the physical limits of the instrument's detectors. It was as if NASA had tried to film the surface of the sun with a smartphone. Alessandro Mora, a lead Juno investigator, realized this wasn't a glitch. Deep in Io's southern hemisphere, a massive, as yet unnamed hotspot had roared to life. The numbers were staggering. Initial estimates placed the energy release between 80 and 260 terawatts. To put that in perspective, the total power consumption of the entire human race, every car, factory, and city on Earth, is about 19 terawatts. This single spot on a tiny moon was belching out more than 6 times the energy of all the world's power plants combined. Spanning over 40,000 square miles, the hotspot was larger than Lake Superior. But as Mora and his team deconstructed the saturated data, they found a haunting detail. The heat wasn't coming from one central chimney. It appeared to be coming from several distinct sources, separated by vast distances. Yet they were emitting with such violent intensity at the exact same moment that they appeared as a single, blinding leviathan. The question shifted from, what is that? How are they all doing this at once? As the mission team deconstructed the JIRAM data throughout mid-2025, a new mystery began to emerge, one far more disturbing than the sheer volume of heat. NASA analysis revealed that the saturation event wasn't a singular, isolated eruption. Instead, it was a coordinated surge. 3 distinct volcanic centers, including the well-documented hotspots P139 and PV18, had flared up in perfect, haunting unison. In standard geology, volcanoes are supposed to be independent. On Earth, if Mount Etna erupts in Italy, it has no immediate physical connection to volcanic activity in Hawaii or Japan. They are separate plumbing systems fueled by local, isolated pockets of magma. But on Io, the rules of isolation seem to have vanished. NASA deep dive into the infrared timestamps showed that these hotspots, separated by nearly 600 miles of frozen, sulfur-crusted wasteland, were pulsating. They weren't just erupting at the same time, they were reacting to the same invisible heartbeat. The team at the National Institute for Astrophysics called it a synchronized cataclysm. It was as if the moon were a single, giant organism and these volcanic vents were its pores. For scientists, this was a moment of profound confusion. To have 3 separate points on a planetary body trigger at the exact same millisecond implies a level of internal connectivity that defies everything we know about moon formation. If Io were simply a solid rock with a few hotspots, these eruptions should have been random. Instead, the data suggested a ghost in the machine, a hidden force that was coordinating the destruction from deep within the core. NASA was left with a terrifying question. How could the crust of a moon be so thin and its interior so volatile that an eruption on one side could instantly trigger a disaster on the other? The search for the answer was about to reveal the true, liquid nature of Io's heart. The solution to the synchronization mystery, officially verified in early 2026, was something far more complex than a simple, underground ocean. For decades, the leading theory was that Io hid a global magma ocean, a vast, sloshing layer of liquid rock just beneath its crust. But as Juno began measuring the moon's gravity with extreme precision, the data from the Park et al. 2025 study revealed a shocking truth. There is no global magma ocean. Instead, Io is what scientists now call a magma sponge. This is the big reveal. Io's mantle isn't a liquid sea. It is a stable, partially molten matrix, a solid rock structure riddled with billions of interconnected pores filled with pressurized magma. Think of it like a giant, planetary-scale kitchen sponge soaked in water. When you step on one corner of that sponge, the water doesn't just stay there, it is forced through the internal network and squirts out of the opposite side. This is exactly what happens when Jupiter's massive gravitational field steps on Io. As the moon follows its elliptical orbit, Jupiter's gravity stretches and squeezes the entire planetary body. This mechanical energy doesn't just create heat through friction, it creates hydrostatic pressure. In 2026, researchers using the California Planetary Geophysics Code found that melt transport on Io is so efficient that magma travels through this koa sponge across hundreds of miles in a matter of seconds. This explains the terrifying synchronization we saw in Section 3. The 260 terawatt surge wasn't a coincidence, it was a pressure wave. When Jupiter squeezed Io's core, it sent a ripple of liquid fire through the magma sponge, forcing 3 separate volcanoes to erupt at the exact same moment. We aren't looking at independent volcanoes, we are looking at the pour of a pressurized moon leaking under the weight of the most violent tidal forces in the solar system. The final piece of the Io puzzle fell into place in January 2026 when the Southwest Research Institute published a definitive study on the moon's chemical origins. For years, astronomers wondered if Io had once been a paradise of ice and water, similar to its neighbors Europa and Ganymede, only to have its oceans boiled away by Jupiter's radiation. The truth is far bleaker. The study confirmed that Io was born dry. It formed in a region of the early solar system so hot that water could never take hold. It was a scorched rock from day one, destined for a life of eternal geomechanical agony. This dry birth is what makes Io a planetary-scale radiator. Because there is no ice to melt or water to evaporate, 100% of the energy generated by Jupiter's gravitational tug-of-war is converted directly into heat through internal friction. Io is caught in a permanent vice between Jupiter and the outer moons. They stretch its body by as much as 330 feet every single orbit. That constant stretching and squeezing is what keeps the magma sponge at a boiling point, preventing the moon from ever cooling down. The most haunting confirmation of this liquid reality is Loki Patera, a 120-mile-wide horseshoe-shaped lake of fire. In late 2025, Juno captured sunlight glinting off its surface, revealing that the lava there is as smooth as polished obsidian. It is a literal mirror of black glass, a window into the moon's pressurized soul. What NASA found on Io is terrifying because it reveals a world that is not just volcanic, but a world that is being kept alive only by the violence of its environment. It is a preview of the extreme physics that rule billions of exoplanets across the galaxy, worlds where gravity is not just a force, but a furnace. Io is a warning. In the deep reaches of space, some worlds are born only to be tortured.